welcome back to my channel. My name is Derica and you're watching Shelf Love with D. Welcome back to another weekly wrap up of my reads and streams. Y'all, I'm really gonna try not to be before you long. I am not feeling the greatest. Two of my kids have been sick this past week, running a fever and things like that, and now me myself I am not feeling the greatest. Been kind of sleeping all day today and just feel yucky. So I got my tea. Normally when I'm doing my videos, I have my glass of coffee, my cup of coffee, but I needed some tea today. I just needed something that was kind of medicinal, kind of therapeutic, and to kind of soothe my throat a little bit. So let's get right into this wrap up so that I can get back to resting. All right, so the first book up that I read this past week was Viola Davis's Finding Me memoir. This book was so good, so good. One second, let me grab it because I actually have this one on my shelf. All right, so here we go, and as you can see, I've annotated a little bit, took some notes in here. I am walking away with so much words of wisdom, little nuggets, reflections. This was so good. This was my first memoir that I read. Definitely won't be my last, but really enjoyed this. Her writing was it was well written. It was an easy read. I will say that it was an easy read. She did very well, especially for it being her first memoir. I can only imagine how, when trying to sit down and write about your life, there's things that you may forget, things that you may sit on for a little while because they have the most impact on you, as far as like, there were times that she kind of repeated herself on things. One of those things being that, she was a crybaby. It was like every other page something would happen and she was like, I was crying because I was a crybaby. And I just think because that was sort of like, she was trying to really put emphasis on this, that, she was a crybaby, or that she, wet the bed until she was, I think, like 14 or something like that. But I'm not going to give this book a star rating because it is about someone's life. And so when I sat down to read this book, I was simply sitting down to read about her life. And so I walked away feeling like I did learn more about her, have so much more respect and adoration for her, and really, really enjoyed this book. It is very easy to sit down and finish this book in one setting. I read it immersively, so hearing her voice along with reading the words on the pages just made for a really nice experience. One thing I liked about this book was that she also put pictures in here. I love looking at old pictures. I am a picture girly. I am always that family member or friend that is pulling the camera out and taking pictures, and not so much as to like document what we're eating, but those moments where we're laughing, joking, talking. I love to have those moments where I sit back and look at old photos and see how we all have changed and grown. So I like that she put that in there. But highly recommend Viola Davis's memoir. Her story, oh my gosh, it had me crying at the end, but you just really learn to be thankful for life, to understand that no one's life really is easy. We all have gone through or are going through different things at different times, and to not judge a book by its cover, especially when we come across people who seem mean or hardened. You never know their why, so have grace, because goodness gracious, for her to still be standing, functioning, smiling, having a family and marriage of her own after everything that she's been through, it is just a testament to her faith and to her personal strength as well, because my gosh, never would have made it. So definitely highly recommend this book. If you have not read it, get into it. If possible, read it immersively, because her audiobook was A1. She did a great job with that. All right, so moving on to the next book that I read was Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murder. This book for me was basically just to be a palate cleanser. I was starting not to feel well. I had just read Viola Davis's memoir, which was heavy, 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 heavy. And because of some of the things she talked about, it kind of stirred up things in me and just kind of left me in this reflective state, but also where I'm just like thinking and thinking too much on things that, you know, were making me feel sad or heavy, and or things that I had been through in my childhood as well, or throughout life. It just had me in kind of like a little melancholy type mood. So I just wanted something light, fluffy, not serious, that would make me laugh. And this book definitely did the job. I rated it 3.5 stars. And for me personally, that's probably the highest that I would ever rate a book like that, just because to me it's just a silly, fluffy, light read. I definitely got some laughs out of that book. Vera Wong is so funny. She's in this book is about an elderly Asian woman who owns a tea shop that is not getting much business, but that is her pride and joy. She has a son who you know, he's not really nice to her. He looks at her as overbearing, overwhelming. She texts him every morning to remember, I think it was to drink his water and to be looking for a girlfriend, you know, where he works at or whatever. She's very true to the Asian customs and beliefs, and he just doesn't really want any part of that. So he kind of just lives his own life. He ignores her calls and things like that. So at some point in this book, there is a murder in her tea shop, and she begins to do her own investigation because she feels that the police are not doing a great job. So she starts to do her own investigation, you know, and starts to question the people that she believes could be involved in the murder, the people who she feels has a reason for that. And in doing so, she ends up building relationships with the potential suspects, and they all start to look at Vera as an extended mom or aunt. And that is one of the things that I loved most about this book. Outside of the laughs that I got from it, I love the newfound family. I am one that is so big about family, so big about relationships and building community. So yes. So I am big about building community and relationships, and love those times that and love when those relationships begin to grow so close and so deep that you start to look at that person as a sister or a brother or a second mom or grandmother and things like that. And there was so much of that in this book. And in the end, you know, they ended up walking away. You know, Vera helped solve the murder, but they still had a relationship, and so they, you know, looked out for her, took care of her, helped her fix up her tea shop and things like that. So it was a really cute, fluffy read, a very good palate cleanser, the perfect book for a palate cleanser because you don't really have to think too much on it. I will say I did not guess who the murderer was. I was off. I thought it was someone, and I don't want to give anyone away, so I'm not going to say who it was, but I did not guess it. When I was reading over the reviews, I saw I think her name is Adriana Pryor. She is another booktuber. She was like, she guessed who the murder suspect was early on, and I'm like, did you really? How? So I don't know, but if you are looking for a fun, lighthearted, fluffy read that will also give you some laughs and good feels, definitely pick this book up. Highly recommended for a palate cleanser. I think in the future going forward, I was kind of using urban fiction for that, but then some of these urban fiction books started to frustrate me too much, so I think I may pick up the Vera Wong type books, or like the I think it's Finley Donovan or something like that, because they really are books that you don't have to think about, and they're just going to be silly and, you know, just help you to feel light and fluffy as well. All right, so the next book up that I read was My Dark Vanessa. I rated this book 5 stars, and it's kind of weird because of what the book is about that you say, oh, this is a 5-star read. But overall, I feel that she did an amazing job on showing how when sometimes these, okay, first let's stop. And let me tell you what the book is about if you are not familiar with My Dark Vanessa. It is a book about a 15-year-old girl who ends up having an affair, or is in her mind in a relationship with her teacher, who is 20 years older than her, 27 years older than her. He's grown, point blank period. But in this book, Vanessa does not see herself as a victim. Of course, she doesn't see him as a predator. She feels like we are in love. And although in the book it comes out that she is not the first student that he's had, that he has, what is the word? I cannot think of the word. Anyways, although it comes out in the book that she is not the first student that he has preyed upon, she feels like, yes, they may have been victims, but what we have is different. He loves me. He needs me. You know, I make him feel alive. I'm special. And it showed the process. This author did a great job of showing the process of grooming, and he took his time and made her feel like everything was up to her. It was, you know, whatever she was comfortable with. They wouldn't do anything she wasn't comfortable with. He made her feel like that, even though he was pushing for those things, you know. So it started out very subtle, like letting her read a book, which I think was called Lolita. So then, you know, she starts to see herself or see him and her in this book, and then it's another book, and then it's, you know, him complimenting her of how well she, you know, how different she is, how she's mature for her age, and how, you know, she has more depth than her friends or her peers. And so it's a slow process, you know, that gradually turns into more, you know, the hand on the knee and hugging and, you know, things like that. And so in her mind, Vanessa is like, this is my man. I have a grown boyfriend, you know. And she's, in a way, she says she says in the book that she's grateful for him, because if it had not been him, it just would have been, you know, teenage boy after teenage boy that, you know, would have broken her heart. And, you know, she would have been worse off if she went the direction of dating somebody her own age, because she hears her friends, you know, crying about breakups or getting cheated on, or, you know, guys being jerks and things like that. So she's like, thank God that I went straight to a grown man, you know. But as the story unfolds, we do begin to see, you know, where she starts to maybe question things. And when she starts to question it, you know, he either makes her feel childish or makes her feel, you know, like, no, you're different, you know, you're special. I would only have taken this risk for you. But I felt like even how long it was, it needed to be that. I don't think this story could have been rushed. And I think that this author did a great job of just showing that gradual process of grooming, and even the effects that it has on people later in life. I also saw a lot in the reviews that people didn't like Vanessa. She's not a likable person. She herself was already kind of broken and a little odd before he came along. And so, of course, he preyed on that. She's a loner. She didn't have a lot of friends. But I think that that was the point of the author writing this way, is that not all the victims are going to be people that are, you know, pretty girls in foo-foo dresses and skirts, or blonde hair, blue eyes, or who look innocent or who look timid. You know, they're not, victims aren't going to always look at that. They come in different shades and sizes and shapes and mindsets. And, you know, so whether she is someone who looks timid and can't help herself, or she looks like a gothic chick who hates the world, a victim is a victim. And so I didn't mind Vanessa. It was kind of one of those things that I just accepted that was her personality. She was a little socially awkward, and maybe because I can relate to that, you know, I didn't look at her as like, I do not like this female male character. It was just like, you know, I get it. Not everybody is a social butterfly, and not everyone feels comfortable in large groups and things like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I love the gradual, because it was slow, character growth. It took her a long time to come to realize that she too was a victim. And, you know, she's going to therapy throughout the book, but initially when she starts therapy, she only wants to focus on her dad and talking about her relationship with her dad and things like that. But toward the end, she, you know, opens up more, and she just gradually gets to see that maybe I am a victim. Maybe I was preyed upon. Maybe I am messed up, and maybe for dang sure this is not love, even though it felt normal, even though to her, especially in her 15-year-old mind, this is just my boyfriend, this is just a regular relationship and we are in love. She had to come to realize that this was not okay, because there was even a moment in the book where she was like, he tried to fight it, he couldn't help himself. Whenever I would leave the room, he would sit at my desk and try to breathe me in, and the therapist was like, you didn't ask for that, you were simply trying to go to school. And she had that light bulb moment of like, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be something he desired. I was just trying to go to school and get an education. All that extra stuff was on him. He brought that on himself. And, as she started to realize this, she has that moment where she's like starting to see that this is twisted. And she's like, I need this to be love. This has to be love, because if this isn't love, then that means everything was wrong and nothing was real. And I think she held on to the lie. She held on to the fairy tale belief. Even in those moments that she thought this doesn't feel right, she held on to it being a fairy tale love story, as twisted as it sounds. And so she needed to believe that to be okay, to be able to still function in her day-to-day life. Because if this is not love, if what I have held on to all these years is not love, like, what do I have? And that can, for someone who has believed that so long, can be very shattering and debilitating. So this book was a really good. Please check all the triggers. It is not for everybody. I enjoyed the book because I think the author did a great job, and I loved her perspective, and the way that she told the story is different from the regular, a girl gets assaulted and she automatically knows she's a victim and she wants to report it, but she's scared. This one was from the perspective of a girl who doesn't see it that way. So which I can see in this day and age a lot of young girls who think that way. So I definitely think this story needs to be told, and I am glad that I read it. I think I initially heard it on Bookmark by Leah. Thank you so much for recommending this book, girl, because it was a good read. So that is it for my reads. I have not really had much TV or movie watching this past week. I think the only thing that I watched was Hell's Kitchen. We are die-hard Chef Ramsay fans in this household. We have watched every season of Kitchen Nightmares, Master Chef, Hell's Kitchen. So I binge watched the most recent season of Hell's Kitchen. If you have not watched it, watch it. I love me some Chef Ramsay. And the other thing that I watched was Judge Judy, or which is now Judy Justice. Love Judge Judy. That is my girl. Do not play with her. She would chew you up and spit you out. So that is all that I watched this past week. Is there anything that you have been watching or streaming, movies or TV shows that you've watched that you would recommend for me? What books are you currently reading? Also, have you heard of any of these books that I mentioned today, and do you plan to read them? If so, let me know down in the comments. But that is it. That is all for today's video. Thank y'all so much for coming back every week, hanging with me. I appreciate it. And until next time, don't forget to show yourself some love today. Blessed with another chance, blessed with another chance, blessed with another chance, I am